everybody. I think we're live.
We are.
Are we live?
It says live on
fantastic. Okay, so now, sorry, Pretoria News, we always have to be a bit technical because it is a bit of a schlep moving from my Facebook, my Zoom into your Facebook. Hello. It's 1 o'clock, and as promised, Melinda Ferguson, publisher of the fabulous Eva Mezza's Sex Lies Declassified. Eva, hold up the book.
Well, indeed.
Sex Lies and Stellenbosch. If you can see it, it's very glary. We've come to join you all at 1 o'clock today on Pretoria News Facebook site. And I'm very excited to introduce my fabulous author, Eva Mezza. Hello, darling.
I'm so excited to be here. Hello, Pretoria, my place of birth, actually.
I didn't know that.
Yes, at the Mary Font, I think it was, or the Mary Mount, one of the two, but it was definitely Pretoria. I'm a Pretoria girl.
A Pretoria girl? That is so fabulous. I never even realized it, everybody. And I mean, now these days, you're a Stellenbosch girl.
I am. Everybody aspires to land up in Stellenbosch, and here I am, last 20 odd years.
So one of the things, I publish a lot of memoirs. I had not published a successful novel, as in fiction, before I met Eva. Eva was the woman and the author who turned my good fortune around as a fiction publisher with the most incredible book that was published last year called Sex Lies and
Here, let me hold it up. My lighting.
Yeah, you hold yours up.
White sheets. We started off with white, everybody. Right.
This book was published last year in about February, and it literally took the book industry by storm. We never had enough copies in the shops because people were just flooding in and buying this book. I mean, Eva, I think we reprinted about 10 times.
Yeah, we did.
And Eva became like a household name, excuse me. If you haven't heard of Eva Mezza, I'm sorry, but you're a little bit out of fashion. So from being this, when I call you a housewife, a lot of people use housewife as a bit of a disparaging, term, like you're not doing anything. I mean, you're one of the most fabulous housewives that I've ever met in my life. But you did come from a place of not seeing yourself as this author when you wrote your first book.
Exactly. I mean, I'm very much a very busy housewife in that I had a mom and baby group when I had my Lamekis. I've always taught drama, but I've also been very housebound because of my children and because of the nature of my husband's business, which is he's in restaurants. So I've always kind of written, and I've always wanted to write a book. I mean, everybody says that there's one book in them. So I thought, well, let me give it a bash. And so when I suppose everybody else was having an affair, I was having sex on the keyboards.
With keyboards.
Yeah, I mean, with all the characters, it was lots of fun. It's one way of keeping out of mischief. Everybody else was having their little midlife crises. I had half a one.
And Eva, I think, I mean, the fact that you wrote, firstly, everybody, she really writes fabulous sex. I mean, I think in lockdown, it is something, we were talking a little bit about it before. I won't tell you exactly what we were saying, but I was sort of saying that, I think people in lockdown, because we're all staying with our partners for so long, I mean, it's been 74 days now. And I was saying, the chances of having great sex with someone when you've been in lockdown for 74 days is sometimes getting a little bit slimmer as we get older. But what a good shag does during lockdown to alleviate all the tension is quite miraculous. Now, I've always wanted to know, how did you land up being able to write so well about sex?
I did not know my book was going to be published, so I had a lot of fun. And yeah, it was just like I was in the my girls had kind of like never really used the tree house, so I kind of took over the tree house, and I sat there and I would spend hours thinking about these fabulous sex scenes, and also because I just think porn is very different to a really nice sex scene. I just don't think men get quite what women are looking for. So yeah, but I think I knew that I didn't really have an audience at that stage, so I wasn't self-conscious about it. I did have my 4 friends and a few other friends that I'd sent to, but yeah, I think that's why my sex scenes were quite, and also they seemed to push the plot forward. They weren't gratuitous. All the gratuitous sex scenes we managed to take out. Am I right? We took a few out.
Yeah.
The first year. So yeah. I think that was it. I mean, I think I had a lot of time to basically play with them, with the words, and try and make it as sexy as possible, but without being really rough. I mean, unless it was that kind of sex scene, like with in the recent
but even your rough scenes are still written with well, you still write them well. Good writing. You know, I think you can get away with anything, write about anything, as long as the writing is good. And now that's something that a lot of people struggle with. I mean, I personally found 50 Shades of Grey quite badly written. I could see what the thing was with this whole dominatrix. I mean, he wasn't a dominatrix, a dominator, Christian Grey, and this whole thing of being kind of in bondage. And I thought the idea was really good, but it fascinated me how, I think it might even be, it's a lot of millions of people. I even imagine there might be 1 billion people who have read 50 Shades of Grey. So there was something in me, as a publisher, who had been looking for a great sex book, a book that was going to be a great read, but that had enough sex in it to also sell, because let's be honest, sex sells. I know that the people watching on this broadcast are probably being a bit titillated, because we are talking about sex on Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock.
I mean, who does?
Who does? I mean, really, this is a great lunchtime conversation. But so you, for me, ticked so many boxes, because one of the things, and hold your sex life, Stellenbosch, up, please, Eva, because I'm not going to hold mine. One of the things in this first book was that I was immediately drawn to your characters. Your protagonist, your main character, Jen, is a very relatable woman. She discovers her husband, who's getting a blowjob from the wine rep right at the beginning of the book on his 50th birthday. Hey.
Yes.
And so basically the whole plot starts unraveling from that point. But I know as women, many of us have caught or have suspected our partners, husbands, boyfriends of being unfaithful. So I think you really tapped into a kind of psyche that women do deal with on a regular level, of suspecting their husbands or boyfriends or whatever of infidelity. And then you take Jen on this journey, which I don't want to give it away, because I mean, there's a whole plot going on and everything, but how much, I always wanted to ask you this, how much of yourself was in Jen?
I think Jen is almost like the universal 40, on the cusp of 50-year-old. And when I was writing it, we were very much at the same age, Jen and myself. I'm now over 50. So, I mean, I had started it just also before my 50th. In fact, it was completed by my 50th birthday. So there is a lot of Jen in all of us. I think all of us who are married, who have had children, who have devoted most of our lives to our children, and have almost like forgone a career. Well, I mean, I had to, because, you know, if you've got a husband in a restaurant, it's very difficult to kind of pursue a full-on career, the two of you. Something has to give. And it was almost like a very quiet agreement. And I was happy to do that. But I've always tried to keep busy as well, so that, you know, just so I've always had my foot in some sort of like working door. But yes, I think there's a lot of Jen in me, but there's a lot of Frankie in me, I think, as well. I'd love to be Frankie. I love Frankie, but I love Jen, because I think Jen's story is a universal story of women who are at the cusp of their life is changing. I mean, they're going at the cusp of menopause, their marriage, the empty nest is happening. Are they still attractive? Men are going through huge turmoil as well. And I think we underestimate the male menopause, actually. So they're also going through huge crises.
And John, who is, by the way, if you don't know the book, if you haven't read Sex, Lies, and Stellenbosch and the new book, Sex, Lies, Declassified, John is Jen's husband in the first book, and he becomes her ex-husband in the second book, or rather in the first book, but by the time the second book is happening, he's already her ex-husband. And John, for me, is such a stereotypical male, South African male in the best of ways. When I say stereotypical, I rather mean typical, because he's going through his own menopause. He's, I don't want to swear on Pretoria News. I was about to say the F word. I'd rather say he's messing around. He can't keep his hands off Frankie. He can't keep his eyes off young women. He's like many men, women, women, girls, don't we know these men who you go to a restaurant with and they're so busy looking at the girl or the waitress who comes in that you feel like, am I actually like even existing here? And John was doing this a lot in the marriage. Did you also, because John for me is one of the most multi-dimensional characters. So when I said stereotypical, I was actually wrong. But he's so multi-dimensional in his recognizability. Being in Stellenbosch and being around a lot of people, I think, because you've been there for a long time, were you drawing heavily from people that you knew, from people that you'd met?
I'll tell you something, that being in the restaurant and being a waitress, starting off as a waitress, I've been very aware of men and their advances, particularly as a young student. And so you kind of like, and I always observe them. And yes, I've drawn from the restaurant, I've drawn from people around me, I've drawn from uncles, I've drawn from, you can be at a function and you've got a man come up to you who's supposedly your husband's friend and make some sort of like covert, actually it's not so much overt, advance. Do you know what I'm saying? Like sexual advance, but it's not quite, you can't quite make it out. But so I've drawn a lot from this, and I do believe. I was at school and I won a public speaking competition all those years ago in matric about male menopause. It was hysterical. So isn't it weird that I've come full circle and I'm talking about John and he's basically there. So that is, I've always been very, very aware of men and I've watched the way they look. I've watched the way they kind of like speak to better looking, to good looking girls. I've watched that and I've also experienced it.
And John gets into quite a lot of rough sex with Frankie. I mean, especially in your second book. Hold it up, Eva. Sex, Lies, Declassified, just in case we forgot, because we've got red sheets. So everybody, the second book, and I mean, they do stand alone. If you only read the first book, we don't want you to, because we want you to read both. But if you had to pick up the second book without reading the first book, it would stand alone. It's not like a series where if you miss some of it, you won't know what's going on. They both stand alone, but they are fabulous as a double feature. And I thought that the whole imagining of the second book was actually really clever, because I think that the sex is more erotic. The sex is actually even better in the second book. And the characters who are having sex or who aren't having sex are deeper and more multi-dimensional, and their stories have now been taken onto a whole new level. I found you to be such a driven and dedicated and disciplined author. And I hardly ever get an author able to produce 2 books in 2 years. They usually take 5 years or 3 years between the next book. Did you have
you ever thought that maybe you are a bit of a tyrant?
No, but I mean, the two of us get on like a house on fire because we're both lunatics and we both actually work a lot. Eva is, if I say to Eva, your deadline is on the 1st of September, she'll be there on the 1st of September, maybe even 2 days before. So for me, it's been fantastic working with someone like you, but I know that you've even got a 3rd book in mind. So there's a trilogy going on in your head. Were you aware when you first came up with the idea for Sex, Lies, and Stellenbosch, did you know that this was going to be a long haul kind of 3-book series?
I knew that I had kept something open for in case. because I just thought that when I wrote this book, so I had, you know the story, sorry, and you know that I wrote a play and then I wrote a book and I wanted to write a screenplay or else a series. And in fact, I don't think you know this, that I had actually joined like a writers group to actually to translate the what was then called Corked into a series. So I knew that it could run, have like a second season in my head, because this was just an experiment, just as I say, to combat a midlife crisis. So so yeah, so I did in a way know, but but even you picked it up, because even with Cork, there was some, I think it was something, we won't give anything away. There was something there and you just said, no, actually you need to make it more kind of like more stand outish, more of a cliffhanger.
A cliffhanger,
yeah, than you have. So mine was a little bit more subtle, for just in case. But I so loved the second book. It was more difficult to write it. Because I now knew that people were reading the sex scene, so I had become quite self-conscious. So that was quite difficult. And so I'm quite happy that you say that you prefer these sex scenes, because I found them very much more difficult. Because I think, oh my goodness, auntie's reading or mummy's reading now, and my dad, oh shit. Do you know what I'm saying?
You've got 4 daughters.
Yeah.
4 beautiful daughters, and some of them are not very old.
No, so and they are at primary school, so it's very difficult. Then you actually become you become aware that you are known as this author of saucy fiction. Let's use it. Let's say saucy fiction for want of a better word. But where were we? What were we talking about, Melinda?
We were talking about the sex being better in Sex Declassified,
or whether we knew there were 3. Okay, we knew that there were 2, definitely. We knew that there were 2. But I really thought it was going to be Sex, Lies and Alibis and then done. But I think it had reached, and I actually managed to reread this book now. And I'm so pleased I did stop where I did. And it is standalone. I think it would have been too long. We did need that 3rd. And if you think the sex has been good here, haha.
Well, you know,
that'd be really hard.
I must say, if there any, I mean, listen, men are also loving this book, by the way, because this is not just directed at women. You have queues of guys in Stellenbosch. When Sex, Lies and Stellenbosch first came out, the guys were queuing at the shops. They haven't been able to queue during the very high level 5s, but they've already started making their way into level 3 lockdown. And I know that books in Stellenbosch specifically and in Somerset West are disappearing very quickly off the shelves. I would suspect that Pretoria is going to be the next to follow suit, because I think there's a fascination, and I think I'm also going off the subject here, but there's a fascination with Stellenbosch as a place. I mean, we had the Stellenbosch Mafia. We had, what are the other books around Stellenbosch in the last 2 years? There was another one as well. The whole Steinhoff thing. I mean, there's been a lot of interest. Yeah. There's been a lot of interest in that. I don't know, we call it a town. It's one of the wealthiest towns in this country, if not the wealthiest. I mean, there are more, how many $1 million millionaires?
I don't know. Should we look at the back somewhere? Just a lot. But anyway, there's a lot. Yeah,
it's basically yes, I mean there are $3,400 millionaires before they invested in Steinhoff shares, which was Eva's funny way of going, well, things are not as they used to be in Stellenbosch. But I mean, so I think the fascination for Stellenbosch isn't just for the people who live in Stellenbosch. I think across the country there's been an ongoing fascination, and especially since all the mafia stuff and the corruption, and so you were very clever in terms of where you set this first book, and that the second book actually carries on with Stellenbosch, but it kind of branches out to Cape Town as well now in your second book. Eva wrote the alluring opulence of the famed Cape winelands, coupled with a very real, often funny, and indeed relatable crisis suffered by Jen, makes for a sexy, fast-paced page turner. And I think that's what I find with your readers. They become quite obsessed with you. You've got a lot of fans now. I see them all over the place. And I saw you at Franschhoek, where people were queuing and queuing to speak to you. you've become a bit of a kind of a chick lit celebrity in South Africa, I think, Eva.
Well, that's nice. Well, I wouldn't say celebrity, but you know what? I've got so many really good friends in Stellenbosch, and I didn't go out and choose Stellenbosch as a location. I just happened naturally, and because it really is a beautiful backdrop for this kind of story, I think, because there's nothing nicer than actually having people that seemingly have everything that they want, but not everything actually. You know, the love isn't there, the cheating. There's all this, underlying all of that. There's actually something that's a little bit off, and it happens in all small towns, and it happens everywhere in cities as well. So yeah, just that I was familiar with Stellenbosch, and I just feel it's a very sexy town, and yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I think, listen, I mean, it's no coincidence that people have loved television programs like Dynasty, Dallas, the kind of the vicarious living through a bit of the kind of not the rich and famous necessarily, but the wealthy. I mean, there are characters that haven't got a care in the world. It's before lockdown. People haven't lost their jobs. I mean, she becomes a successful interior decorator. They've got a wine farm. Patty's jetting off to New York. There's Captain Stranger who puts her in a boutique hotel. These are the things that I think that our everyday lives are the mundanity and the kind of the realities of our everyday lives. That's why so many women love reading these types of books, because they get to escape into the seemingly not that challenging lives in terms of economics of the characters. And even though they're having emotional trials and tribulations, and everything is very challenging on that level, and relationships are at the center. You know, your other character, what's her name again? The one who's with Leonard, not Bridget, the other.
Claudia.
I mean, she's at these fundraisers at the Table Bay Hotel, and rubbing shoulders with all these people that are bidding on things to a holiday to Thailand. I found that very entrancing. I found it very seductive, because you get so involved with these people, and then you vicariously live through their lives.
You do. And I mean, Cape Town is also sexy. So you've got the best of Cape Town, you know, where they are, they're getting their cappuccinos, and they're walking on the promenade, and they're going to what's the gorgeous George Hotel for drinks, and you know, all of that's happening, but then underlying all of that, you've got the sleaze that is happening in Cape Town, with the sex club and etc. And who is Snooky, and where does he fit in?
Snooky with his teeth and his like crassness. He's so crass. And then there's this really underlying sinister story in line in the second book, in Sex, Lies, Declassified, that things are becoming more dangerous. The sex club, which is this underground executive kind of businessman's club where they do all sorts of, you know, those types of things, and they are actually really around. It's not like Eva made them up completely. But there's that whole underlying theme of the kind of gangsterism thing of Cape Town starts creeping in as well. But I don't want to give more of the book away. A lot of people probably long to write books, especially as the empty nest syndrome starts happening. I mean, I think generally people dream of writing a book. What advice would you give to a woman or a man who's sitting thinking, geez, man, I know I've got a book in me. I mean, you came out of kind of nowhere, got 2 bestsellers under your belt. What's some advice you can give people?
Just write, and don't write thinking that you're going to be published, and don't write thinking about your audience. Just write what you really, really want to write, and let it just come. Let the words flow. I'm a much better writer than I am a speaker, although I've seen a really bad, I can't believe that escaped us, but anyway, I'll tell you about that later. But just write, really, honestly, just write, because it's difficult to be published. Let that happen afterwards. That's what I say. So yeah, that's my advice. And I don't really, as you know, I don't really call myself an author. And I've always grappled with that whole thing about when do you call yourself an author? So it was when I was doing like writing courses, I thought, well, when do you call yourself an author? And they said, well, the minute you write. But I said, well, I dance in the kitchen and I'm not a dancer. And now that I've been published, I'm thinking, when will I really take myself seriously as an author? I think I'm starting to maybe take it a little bit seriously now in terms of becoming a little bit more conscious about what I'm doing. But I think initially when you first start, just have fun. That's it.
And I think that's what infuses your books, is that you are not trying to be strategic. You're not trying to be too clever. You're writing because you love your characters. And I think if you're writing fiction, you have to love your characters because you start breathing them. You know, each of your characters, you give as much to each other as the one you've just written. That is something that is very difficult because I think a lot of writers of fiction concentrate on their like main characters and then they have these other ones that just push the plot forward. Each of your characters has so much depth and tapestry of a whole lot of different colors and feels and layers to them, that they're all there for a certain reason. There's no one there who's just there to push the plot along. I mean, I'd like to say why I chose you as an author, because maybe that's also what people are wondering. And our time is running out, and I would like to really say that I'm overwhelmed by the amount of manuscripts I get. I mean, I'm a publisher. Obviously, once people start hearing that you're a publisher, everybody starts sending their manuscripts. I never looked for Eva. I didn't even want to publish someone called Eva because I'd never met her. But there was a competition at my previous publishing house called Pitch to Publishing. Is that what it was called?
Pitch to Publication.
Pitch to Publication. And I wasn't there. There were a whole lot of people in the room. And did you fly up to Joburg for it?
Yeah, I did.
So you flew up to Joburg from Stellenbosch. I didn't attend, and I must say I was busy, so I wasn't really looking for anything. And I got a call from the director of the publishing house, probably later that day or the next day, saying, "There's an author that you've got to meet. I think she's perfect for you." And I was like, "Really?" And they said her name is Eva, and she was wearing leather pants. And I'm sorry, I always tell the story, Eva. I'll tell it till I die. Eva was wearing leather pants, and clearly people thought.
Okay, but I have to stop you. It was classic. I keep saying we always had this fight because I would not wear leather pants. They were 299 rand on a sale. They were plastic, but they look leather. Okay, carry on.
Okay, so someone thought they were leather, but they were actually plastic. But anyway, they thought that I must be, because I always wear leather pants. And guys, I'm going to just show you something. I've got my pajama pants and my slippers on right now. Okay, so this is actually me in my leather pants. I have my collar neck on, but I've got my pajamas on. Okay, so I thought, well, I'm intrigued. A woman who wears leather or plastic pants, I might as well meet. And so we decided to meet in the northern suburbs of Cape Town at a lovely coffee shop called De Oda. And I was like thinking, well, listen, I do not want to publish a novel, but let me just meet this woman. I like her name. It sounded Italian, which it is, because your husband's Dom the Stallion, the Italian stallion. Oh, gosh, that sounds really a little bit, anyway, Dom is fabulous. Hi, Dom. So I met you, and I must say, after an hour of spending time drinking coffee with you, we were both talking so much. We were infusing each other with all this energy. I just fell completely in love with you. I thought, listen, I just hope she can write, because I really like her. I think her energy is amazing, but what happens if she can't write? And I went home and started reading your book, and I was like, and I couldn't stop reading it. It was a page turner. And Sex, Lies and Stellenbosch, even though it wasn't called that at that stage, doesn't matter, long story later, for me, it had me. And I started thinking, you know what, if it's got me, and I'm a bit of a cynic about like chick lit, maybe some other people will also get it. And it was quite a no-brainer actually. But people, the reason I think more than anything was that I really gravitate towards energy. I kept telling Eva about energy earlier, but there is energy with people. And so when you vibe as a publisher, you know, you're not just going to have to sell a book, you're going to have to also sell a person. And I don't think a lot of authors realize that there's a whole package involved in terms of a book. These days, we don't have, because we've got so much visual, social media, you know, television, media. The author cannot be someone, or very few authors get away with being recluses. Of course, there have been recluse authors like J.D. Salinger, like I'm sure James Coetzee is not on every single television program. And I think if authors have their reputation and they don't need to have the media anymore, well, that's fabulous. But in my world, it's hard to sell an author who isn't also able to sell herself. And Eva, you've been bloody good at doing that.
Well, you know what? I just also, you asked for advice. You need to get yourself a pair of plastic pants. That's it. You have to. That's obviously the answer with you anyway. You're such a skank when it comes to plastic pants.
Oh,
but also,
I mean, if everybody walked around with plastic pants, they would all be published. I mean, really.
I mean, really, it's a no-brainer.
You know, so you've ticked so many boxes for me. Not only have you had brilliant product, which was my first box, I must say, the brilliant product was the first box and the most important one. But then you came along with marketing ideas and so much passion and generosity towards the actual books. And you've been so much of a driver in terms of the success of your books. This one didn't get off the bestsellers top 100, but it was in the top 10 for almost most of the year. Number one often, Sex, Lies and Stellenbosch. Sex, Lies Declassified has just been released. Pick it up.
PRETORIA, we're waiting for you, babe, to make it number one. We need the readers. That's what we do. We need readers. So they did it for me the last time. Let's see if they'll do it again.
It's one of the top sellers in a number of exclusive bookstores. The books are both available, especially Sex, Lies Declassified is everywhere at the moment, guys. I'm sure it's in EV Brooklyn. I'm sure it's at Bargain Books. I know that it's on Take-A-Lot. You know, Take-A-Lot is also a great way to order books these days because you just type it in and they deliver it for you. You don't even have to put your mask on when you open the door. You just have to hold it like your book like this and take it from the guy. Yeah, I'm really excited. We're slowly getting back to some kind of normality in the book industry, Eva. I'm really excited for this book to see it start flying like the way that it is going to. It already has started flying, definitely in the Western Cape, and the wave is moving up to Joburg, Pretoria, Durban, wherever. Can't wait for Sex, Lies and Alibis next year, which is going to be the third part of I hope you're busy writing.
I am. I got myself a proper chair because, you know, no, it's definitely there. It's going to be good.
So everybody, I hope you enjoyed this. Pretoria News, thank you so much for hosting, Eva and I.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, your Facebook page rocks. I come here now. I'm a big fan. I just happened to first get onto it when I did my own little Facebook Live once, and now I'm a regular visitor to your fabulous page. Got fabulous people on this page who are interacting. Thanks for the opportunity, and we send you lots of love from the Western Cape.
Bye-bye, Pretoria. Love you lots.
Bye, Pretoria. I have to end it now, Eva. Jeez,
Okay.
now you see, I can never end the meeting. Ah, there it is. End. Bye, everybody.
Bye.